All right, let's dive in. Today, we're heading back to ancient Babylon, using The Richest Man in Babylon as our guide. This book, it's a classic for a reason, right? It's full of these parables and timeless advice for building wealth. But the question is, can those ancient principles really help us navigate, like, the crazy world of modern finance?
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how much of today's financial advice is, well, basically echoes of those Babylonian principles.
Yeah.
But the real test is, do they work now with everything going on in the economy?
Okay, so picture this. Ancient Babylon. We've got Arcot, the richest guy in town. And his friends, naturally, they want to know how he did it. After all, they all started from the same place, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're all hardworking, ambitious, but Arcad, he's figured something out, some kind of wealth code. And that's what makes his story so interesting. He says it's not just luck, it's about understanding and following certain laws of wealth.
And the way he learns these laws, it's kind of a wild story. He makes this deal with Algamish, a wealthy moneylender, to basically work all night long in exchange for financial wisdom. Talk about hustle and prioritizing knowledge. But honestly, does that kind of all-or-nothing approach even work today? Wouldn't a more balanced approach be better, more sustainable?
That's a good point. I mean, Arcad's dedication is impressive, but let's be real. The modern world has so many more distractions, right? Maybe the real lesson isn't the all-nighter itself, but more about the commitment to learning, being willing to invest the time to learn about your finances.
Makes sense. Okay, let's get to the heart of it. What's the first big principle Arcad learns? I'm ready for that ancient wisdom.
Well, brace yourself. This one's a game changer. Ready? Pay yourself first.
Okay, yeah, that one gets tossed around a lot these days. But what does it actually look like in Arcad's world back in ancient Babylon?
So Algamish, the moneylender, he tells Arcad to set aside at least a tenth of everything he earns, consistently. The point is, it's not about deprivation. It's more about shifting your priorities. It's like you're putting your future self on the payroll.
Hmm. But is that really realistic, especially with the cost of everything going up these days? I mean, a tenth might not feel like much for someone who's already well off, but for someone barely making ends meet, it could feel impossible.
Oh, absolutely. It might need to be adjusted, the percentage itself, based on what's going on in your life. The most important part is the mindset shift, thinking of saving as something you have to do, a non-negotiable expense.
So it's not the exact number, it's more about making it a habit, building a system, which
Yeah.
brings us to that whole wealth tree thing the book talks about. It's a little cheesy, but it gets the point across.
It is a bit cheesy, yeah. But you're right, it gets the point across. Your savings are the seed. And, consistent contributions, they're like the water and sunlight. They help it grow into this big, strong source of financial security.
And just like a tree, it takes time. Arcad, he doesn't become some master of wealth overnight, does he? I mean, he makes some pretty funny, though kind of expensive mistakes early on.
Oh, yeah, he does. Remember that time he decides to get rich quick by investing in jewels? Based on the advice of a brickmaker, not the best financial advisor.
And then there's that time when he's actually making passive income. That's a big buzzword these days, right? But instead of reinvesting it, he blows it all on these huge parties. Ouch.
Yeah, these stories might seem, I don't know, a little simplistic, but they have a really important point. You've got to get advice from the right people. It's so easy these days to get caught up in all the information or misinformation. How do you even know who to trust?
That's a tough one. Maybe we can get into that a bit later. For now, let's get back to Arcad. What are some of the other key things he learns, on his path to getting rich?
He boils it down to 3 laws. Live below your means, seek advice from experts, and make your money work for you.
So basically, spend less than you earn, find the right mentors, and invest wisely. Simple, right?
It sounds simple, but there's a lot more to it than that. And that's where the real challenge is, right? Taking these simple principles and figuring out what they mean in our complicated world.
Right, because it's one thing to say live below your means, but in a world where everyone's telling you to buy, how do you resist? Is willpower enough?
Now that's where things get really interesting. The book, it talks about willpower, but not in the way you might think. Arcad doesn't see it as this magical thing,
Yeah.
He sees it as something you build up like a muscle by setting clear goals and then following through on them.
So less wishing and hoping, more planning and doing.
Exactly. He uses this analogy of, imagine throwing a pebble into a stream every day. One pebble doesn't seem like much, but over time, it creates this ripple effect, right? Like small actions done consistently lead to big results.
I like that. It's not about some magic formula. It's about slow and steady progress. But here's something I've always wondered. The book, it talks a lot about getting rich, but doesn't that seem, I don't know, a bit selfish? Is there any room for like giving back or being altruistic in all of this?
A lot of people wonder about that. But Arcot argues that wealth, when you use it the right way, it actually helps everyone. He believes that wealth circulates. So, say, building a palace. It creates jobs for the builders, artists, all the suppliers. It raises the value of the land around it.
So it's not about hoarding piles of gold. It's about using it to make a positive impact on your community.
Exactly. And that's an important idea to think about. Like, your own financial success, it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. It can actually create this ripple effect of positive change.
That's pretty encouraging. So let's say someone's listening to this and thinking, okay, these ideas are great, but I'm getting a late start. Can I even catch up? What would Arcad say to that?
Well, he actually talks about that with his friends, the ones who are feeling down about their own finances. He tells them it's never too late to start. Even little things, when you do them consistently, can make a big difference over time. He even has a mantra for them.
Ooh, I love a good mantra. What is it?
He tells them to repeat the phrase, "A part of all I earn is mine to keep."
I can see how that would help, to change your mindset and get in the habit of paying yourself first. But honestly, if someone's never really saved money before, where did they even begin?
That's a great question. And that's where we start to connect these old ideas to the realities of managing money today. Maybe we can talk about some strategies and resources in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our listeners would really appreciate that. Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back to explore how to make those Babylonian principles work for you in the 21st century. Welcome back. I have to say, I'm finding all of this, these Babylonian principles pretty fascinating. It's like we're financial advisors, but like time traveling ones.
Yeah. And if we're talking about time travel, one thing that's so clear in The Richest Man in Babylon is that long-term mindset. It's not get rich quick. It's more like build wealth slowly and steadily over time.
Which is kind of the opposite of what we hear all the time these days, right?
Yeah,
Everyone's promising instant success, gratification right now.
definitely. But Arkad's story, it reminds us that real wealth, the kind that lasts,
Yeah.
is built bit by bit, like, I don't know, those strong Babylonian walls.
And that steady, careful approach goes for his investing style too, right? He's not running around trying to get in on risky schemes or chasing after the latest trends.
Exactly. He's all about caution, taking time to think things through. In the book, he says, don't put all your eggs in one basket, and stresses how important it is to diversify your investments.
That makes sense. But diversification, it can feel a bit overwhelming, especially if you're just starting out. You have stocks, bonds, real estate, crypto even. Like, where do you even begin to diversify the smart way?
Yeah, it can be tricky for sure. And something to keep in mind is that what worked back then in ancient Babylon might not be exactly how we do things now. But the idea behind it, the principle, is still good. Think about it like building a house. You wouldn't build the whole thing on sand, would you? You want different materials, different supports to make sure it's stable.
So, how do we do that with our investments? Should we try to have a mix of like low risk and high risk stuff?
That's a common approach, yeah.
Yeah.
You probably heard the term asset allocation. Basically, it's about figuring out the right balance for how much risk you're comfortable with, what your financial goals are. Some people are fine with riskier investments that could pay off big, while others prefer to play it safe, be more conservative.
But here's the thing, even when you diversify, there's always going to be some risk, right? Especially with how unpredictable the markets can be. How do you deal with all that uncertainty? It seems like Arcad has this like unshakable belief in himself that he can build wealth. Is that part of the secret?
You've hit on something really important there. The book puts a lot of emphasis on mindset. You have to believe you can create wealth. Arcot has this line, our acts can be no wiser than our thoughts. It's like a reminder that what we believe really shapes what happens in our lives.
So it's not just about the strategies and techniques, it's also about having the right attitude.
Exactly, and that's where mentors come in, having the right people around you. Arkad had Algamish to guide him, and later on he becomes a mentor to his friends, sharing what he's learned.
Which is kind of what we're trying to do here, right? Share insights and hopefully help our listeners take charge of their own financial journeys. But I'm curious, in this day and age, how do you even find a good financial mentor? There are so many people out there calling themselves experts, gurus. It's hard to know who's legit.
It is tough, yeah. I think the main thing is to find someone who's got a good track record, someone who shares your values and genuinely wants to see you succeed. It's not just about finding someone who'll tell you what you want to hear. You want someone who'll push you, help you grow and make smart choices.
So someone who knows what they're talking about and who you can trust. And maybe someone who's, a little further along in their journey than you so they can give advice based on experience.
Exactly. Like having a financial Sherpa to guide you along those tricky mountain trails.
Okay, so we've talked about principles, mindset, finding mentors. What else stands out to you from Arcad's teachings? Something that makes sense for our lives today?
One thing that really sticks with me is his view on, like, what's the point of wealth? He doesn't see it as the goal itself, more like a tool to build a better life
Mm.
for yourself and for others.
He even talks about using wealth to make a difference in the world. It's nice to hear instead of always hearing about the greedy millionaire.
Definitely. He talks about enjoying the journey, using your wealth to have experiences, to help other people, to leave a legacy. It's not about stuffing gold in a safe. It's about using it to make your life and the lives of those around you richer.
So it's about figuring out how your financial goals match up with your values, your purpose.
Exactly. It's about living a life that has meaning and feels fulfilling. And that's something that matters no matter what time period you're in or what your financial situation is.
That's a powerful thought. So as we head into the final part of our deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away? What's the real heart of the richest man in Babylon for us today?
I think it comes down to
Yeah.
this. Financial freedom. It's possible for anyone who's willing to learn the rules and actually follow them. It's not about luck. It's not about where you come from. It's about taking charge of your money and making good decisions.
And about being patient, sticking with it, having that long-term view. No quick schemes, just steady work and smart choices.
Exactly. It's a journey, not the destination. And the rewards are worth it.
We'll be back in just a bit to talk about how to actually take action. Start putting those Babylonian principles to work in your own life. Stick around.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. I don't know about you, but after spending some time with the richest man in Babylon, I'm feeling pretty motivated. It's like we found this map to financial success, but now the big question is, how do we use it? How do we take these ancient principles and actually make them work for us today?
That's the real challenge, isn't it? It's one thing to understand the ideas, but a whole other thing to put them into practice, in a way that actually sticks and works for you.
Yeah, because let's be real for a second. Knowing you should pay yourself first and actually doing it, those are two very different things, especially with so many things pulling at our time and our money.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where having a plan and the right tools can really help. It's like going on a trip, right? You wouldn't just wander around aimlessly. You'd want a map, a compass, the right gear to keep you on track.
So how do we get ourselves ready for this financial journey? Where do we even begin? I think a good place to start is to just take a look at where you're at financially right now. Kind of like taking inventory before you go hiking. You need to know what you've got, what you're working with, and what kind of terrain you're going to be dealing with.
So are we talking about making a budget?
Yeah, but not like a super restrictive, no fun budget. Think of it more like a financial roadmap, a way to see where your money is going so you can decide how you want to use it.
Okay, a roadmap, not a set of handcuffs. I like that. But I think a lot of people avoid budgeting because it just feels like a chore, like something they should do but never get around to.
I get that. It can feel that way. But there are so many apps and tools now that make budgeting so much easier than it used to be. You can even automate a lot of it.
Ew, automation. Tell me more about that. What kind of tools are out there?
There are apps that link up to your bank accounts, and they categorize your spending for you. Some of them even give you personalized tips on how to save money. It's like having a financial coach right there on your phone.
That does sound pretty useful. But even with a budget and these cool tools, sticking to it can be hard, especially with all the advertising and messages telling us to buy, buy, buy. How do you resist all of that?
It's tough, for sure. That's where being mindful can help. It's about paying attention to your spending habits, like what triggers you to spend and how you feel about money.
So you're saying it's not just about the numbers, it's about understanding the psychology, like why we spend the way we do.
Exactly. Like, why do you grab your credit card when you're feeling stressed? What need are you trying to meet? When you start to see your spending patterns, you can start making better choices.
So it's about being aware and then building better habits. But honestly, sometimes those old habits are hard to break. What if you mess up? Like, what if you overspend or don't save as much as you planned?
It happens. Everyone slips up sometimes. The important thing is to not beat yourself up about it, and don't let it ruin everything. Think of it as a chance to learn. What did you learn from it? How can you change your plan so you don't make the same mistake again?
So it's about progress, not being perfect. and being willing to adapt as you go.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, you don't have to figure all this out on your own. Talk to friends, family, or even a financial advisor. There are also a ton of online communities and resources that can keep you motivated and on track.
It's like we're all in this together, figuring out this financial world as a team. And that reminds me of something we touched on earlier. The idea that wealth isn't just for you, it's about making things better for everyone.
Absolutely. That's something special about The Richest Man in Babylon. It emphasizes using your wealth in a good way, not just for yourself, but to help your community to make the world a better place.
Like that ripple effect we talked about. When you're doing well financially, it can create this positive chain reaction, helping other people and making a real difference. That's pretty inspiring.
It really is. And it reminds us that financial well-being, it's not just about how much money you have, it's about living a life that has meaning and purpose.
So, for everyone listening who's feeling ready to take action, what's the one piece of advice you would give them? What's the most important thing we've learned from The Richest Man in Babylon?
I would say, remember that financial freedom, it's a journey, not a destination. Start small, do it consistently, and never stop learning. And the most important part, believe in yourself. Believe that you can create a life that's abundant and prosperous.
Well said. And if you want more guidance, more inspiration, I highly recommend checking out The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a classic for a reason, full of wisdom and practical advice that can really change how you think about money.
It's a book you can come back to again and again, and each time you'll probably find something new, a different perspective. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one sharing your financial wisdom, like Arcad did with his friends.
I like that. Well, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into The Richest Man in Babylon. We hope you've enjoyed it and are feeling empowered to take control of your financial future. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.